Hey, it's Mike, Mysticsmokers, and I'm doing a real quick and dirty video just to give a couple of tips for installing the new stack hinge. I'll do a better, longer video that's actually edited later on, but I just haven't had time to do it. I'm slammed with a bunch of projects. But there are some guys out there that need a little bit of instruction, and there are some good tips for putting these stack hinges on. And I wrote a little cheat sheet out for us so that we can keep up with that. And I'll zoom in just a few minutes to be able to see that better. I understand we can't see it from where we are, but a little quick explanation. For a lot of years, I have wanted to change the way stacks fold rather than the traditional across the top, or at least provide some options other than the just traditional coming across the top. So it took a little bit of engineering, but I have come up with what I like as my final version, at least, of a stack hinge that will hinge or pivot more than 180 degrees. And that allows us to have multiple, in this case, at least three, hinge or fold options. The traditional top fold, where it comes over the top. But there are some problems with that top fold, or at least some downsides to it. One, you've got to have a saddle that sits either here or between the two doors. It can't go behind the door because obviously when you open the door, it would be striking the saddle there. The door would strike the saddle. You could mount the saddle on top of the stack. I've seen that done, but it looks like a flag hanging up there, and I just don't like that look. So that gives us two options for a saddle: put one here, put one here. If you put it here, that means the stack has to be longer than we generally like. That stack is 55 inches. This is a 250 gallon. 6 inches by 55 is perfect for this cooker. You can go longer, it's not gonna hurt anything. Go shorter than about 48 or so, and you definitely start running into problems. I've put 50s on them before and they ran fine, but anyway, you would have to run it long enough if you put the saddle here that it at least extends past the saddle. Now, another issue is it has to, if you fold traditional, you have to clear the door stops. So your stack hinge has to be taller so that your stack, when it's laying across here, clears the door stops, clears the hinges, and all of those things. I like it to be a little bit lower profile. If you want to use a custom cover or a tarp or something like that, or you just like to get things cleaner looking across the top, I think this is a better solution. And let's look at the three options. First is and this obviously is not welded to the collector. This is not stainless steel. This is just mild steel. It's Schedule 10 pipe, 6-inch Schedule 10 pipe, and I've just taking the paint off of it. It's the only reason it's still shiny. So the traditional fold obviously comes across the top like this. Don't want to knock our little sheet down. It has some drawbacks that we mentioned before. Another issue is this pipe on this size cooker isn't that bad, but when you get into the 8-inch certainly, or if you've got back and neck issues like me, you don't like having to reach across a trailer, which your trailer and table for this one sticks out here. You've got to really get across here to do that, and that's cumbersome. You come around the back, step between the trailer or whatever. I've done all that. I don't like it. It's what we like to look at because it's what we've gotten used to looking at, and I think it won't take long for people to get used to the other two options as well, particularly when you see the benefits from them. So that's traditional. The second, which I think most of my customers are going with now, is the front fold, which is a whole lot easier to get in here and fold this rascal down to the front. Now, I'm making a saddle that will bolt to the bottom of this collector kit right here, the collector floor, and with a nylon lock nut on the, probably on the outside. Doesn't matter. This doesn't get hot enough to bother a nylon lock nut. And it will have a nice little decorative thing in the center here. But basically it's triangle shape with a little U shape right here to saddle against this. Two little holes for bungee cords to hook on for travel, which would be nice to keep this thing from bouncing around. And when we're cooking or whatever, if you don't want to look at this thing, just slide it around, just spin it around to the back out of the way. I don't think it would be any problem to look at, but you know, at least you have options. So I kind of like that. This and some considerations when we're cutting stack height, because one of the first steps that we want to do is determine how high we want this thing to fit. Obviously, if you've got to clear the top to go traditional, you need to consider that when you're cutting this base pipe here. And all I did was start with a 55, and I decided to cut it where it is. This customer for this cooker wanted front fold, so one of the conditions there is I don't want it to go down into the trailer level here. So if I draw a level line across here, it would hit the tank about here, well above the trailer. Now if he puts a basket up here in the front, which he will, what we're going to do is just position the back of the basket back here. Then the arc of this thing would just come down in essentially the stack will fit in the basket. You know, if there's a cooler sitting here, it could get in the way, but just arrange whatever you have in the basket that it will miss that is this customer's logic. So that's front fold, and that's pretty cool. Another option is to go for back or side fold, which is here. And you know, if you've got a garage or a carport, that's a consideration there. That gets us what, another 10 inches or so at least of I think that was about 12 inches at least of extra room there. So for some guys, aesthetically, that may be the way to go. I think it does look pretty cool. And for space issues, that may be the way to go. And it gets the cart just a little bit shorter and more compact. So those are the three options, and the ups and downs, or the pros and cons for each of those. And you know, everybody's different, so that's why there are options. So let's start into the actual assembly. I like this hinge sitting in this configuration with the little wings down. Of course, these are these are done on a CNC brake, so they're very, very precise. The tolerance between the top part of the hinge and the bottom part of the hinge is just enough for these bronze bushings that are in the center, and that's where those go. There are two grade 8 bolts that go through the holes, through the 3/8 holes, and I use grade 8 because that's a little bit harder, and it acts as a good hinge pin for the hinge halves there. When we snug these down finally, don't tighten them so much that the hinge is hard to move, but you do want them kind of snug. And another tip on the bolts, because there are two holes up here to hold the plate down, to hold the hinge together. When you tighten the front bolts down, don't over tighten those so much that it squeezes the insulating material, the fireproof rope, self-adhesive rope that you'll put down in a later step. You don't want to squeeze that too much there. So there's 1/16 allowance back here. That strap, that rope, fire rope, is 1/8 thick to start with, and I allowed 1/2 of that for crush as you know, as it squeezes. So there should be a 1/16 gap, and there will be, because that's built into the hinge right here. So just tighten these bolts down, snug them down to where that gap looks uniform all the way across. It's not going to hurt anything if you go a little bit too tight, but you don't want to squeeze this all the way down and you know, just over tighten the material on one side unnecessarily. Just make sure that your gap across there is pretty uniform. Now, I've provided nylon lock nuts. I will probably start putting some wing bolts, wing nuts in there as well, because what I found is, gosh, it only takes the hand pressure to tighten those down, and it would be more convenient to have a wing nut on there and be able to quickly take that off and then put it back together than these nylon lock nuts. So I haven't decided. I'll probably start providing you know, 2 wing nuts with those as well. These will stay tight all the time. You'll never loosen these, but we'll be taking these on and off every time you move the stack, obviously. So we've talked about height, how far you want to cut your pipe. I start off, like I said, with a 55 and decided to cut it here. I forget what the measurement was, but it gives me nice clearance there and nice swing down there that I want. So cutting the pipe, I do a rough cut. I give myself probably a 1/2 inch extra, and I just make a rough cut with my grinder with a cutting wheel on it. And then I take it over to the table and I put my little cardboard pipe marker thing, pipe wrap, whatever those things are called, around it. You have to pull these things good and tight. You could use a piece of paper, you could use a piece of poster board or something like that. Obviously, the longer or taller this thing is, the more accurate it is. But if you pull one, I think this one's probably 4.5 inches wide. If you pull it good and tight, and it goes around the pipe on itself a couple of times, and it's all nice and sitting on top of each other, not pieces hanging up or hanging down. In other words, if it's on correctly, you should be able just to slide that thing up and down. So when I have it on the work table over there, one of the things that we need to do is get this end perfectly square. Both of these ends, well, that one too, perfectly square. That up there doesn't really matter. But we want that cut to be perfectly square. So what I do is I slide this down to where I have about a 1/16 of the material of the pipe sticking out. And I use my grinder with the sanding wheel on it, the sanding disc, and I sand that thing down very gently to match my cardboard. Now you would think that that would burn the cardboard or mess it up, but I go just about where that sander will kiss it, and I just move my way around. It only takes about a minute per side. That is the best way that I have found to square the end of that pipe up. Once you get it square, all you've got to do is set this down on your metal work table, slide the pipe down in it, put you 4 tacks. I put a tack on one side, tack on the other side real quickly so that it doesn't pull. You may even want to just, take you some of those vice grip clamps and clamp that to the metal table. 4 tacks all the way around. Do the same thing with the other side. Bring it over, test fit it. Make sure that you're swinging the way that you want to, and that everything clears the way that you have envisioned. And then take it back over to the work table and put your weld going around. Now, this is 1/4 inch material, so it's pretty stout. But if you put a lot of heat on it, I guess there's the potential that you could do some warping there. So to avoid that, I would weld it going downhill. So in other words, do it in like 4 passes or so. This pass and then spin it, and do this pass downhill and then this pass downhill. And going downhill just lets you go a little bit faster. We're not worried about structural integrity. I mean, there's no real forces here. Gosh, that's a long weld all the way around. It's not going to come loose with a little bit weaker weld that is inherent to most downhill welds. So downhill welding is easy, it's fast, it's cool on the material, so that's what I would recommend. So get everything welded up, and then put your fireproof door seal material on. Don't put the door seal material on until after you have done the welding, because although it's high temperature door seal material, the weld is going to get a lot higher than the adhesive on the back of the material can handle. So wait until it cools down and then put your adhesive on, self-adhesive door seal material on. And let me show you. That's the way that I put them on. I just do a wrap. I give myself about 1/4 inch or so, and wrap all the way around, and it is self-explanatory putting on. I wouldn't run it all the way against the metal there. I just give myself a little bit of room. I don't think it would make any difference if you put it against the metal, but I just like putting it right there. So that's a good little shot of it there. You see we've got the bronze washers inside, and we're nice and smooth across the top. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. I think we got everything on the little note. I think we got everything on the little note cheat sheet there. We talked about the saddle option, or the fold options. We talked about saddles. We talked about cutting the pipe. squaring the pipe, welding the base and the top to the pipe, go downhill, assemble the house, install the tape when it cools, and don't over tighten those bolts. So I think this will be okay for a first temporary video, and I'll do a more in-depth one later on.